Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Science Agora. And I would like to welcome you to join us today as we talk about how storytelling and science communication can help to illuminate and protect the wonders of our world. So I am joined by three really interesting and amazing explorers from the Asia Pacific region who will share a little bit about their work and then who will join me on a conversation about the importance of science communication and also about sort of experiences that they've made throughout their career in communicating science to the general public and the challenges that they might have faced by doing so. So I'm really glad that you've tuned in and that you're joining us today at the virtual Science Agora conference in 2021. We have been contributing to the Science Agora already last year, which was a really enjoyable experience, and I'm glad that we have the chance to be back in this virtual space. And I'd like to thank the organizers who helped to put the amazing program at this year's conference together. So how we will run today is that I will start with giving a brief introduction to the National Geographic Society and the work that we do and also where we hope to be in a few years from now. And then I'll hand over to the three explorers, I guess the people that all of you've been waiting for, to share a little bit about their work. And then we'll end with a panel discussion and a Q&A session at the end after all of the presentations. So I would like to encourage everyone to make use of the chat function and to post any questions that you come across throughout the presentation and share that in the chat box if there's anything that you'd like to ask any of the speakers. I have not actually introduced myself yet. So my name is Yannick Kühl. I'm the lead for the National Geographic Society, and I am based in Hong Kong. I've been working with the National Geographic Society for about 4 years now. And I guess another thing that I will do today is also talk a little bit about the grant opportunities that we're providing, because the National Geographic Society obviously has the grant making as the front and center and at the core of our operations. So without further ado, I guess I'll start with the presentation to give you a little bit of background into our organization and what we stand for. So the National Geographic Society is an organization that has by now a legacy of 133 years. So we have a long history, and for this long history, we have been celebrating our world and all that is in it. Today, we describe our mission as that we want to use the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to both illuminate and protect the wonders of our world. So I guess it's no surprise why we're having this session today, because obviously the combination of storytelling and doing robust and important and innovative science is something that's sort of at the core of our organization. Our vision as an organization is that by 2030, we will be globally known for our bold and impactful explorer-led programs that spark curiosity in hundreds of millions of people and inspires them to learn about, care for, and protect our world. I'll now show you a quick video that will give you a little bit a glimpse into what we are as an organization and what we're trying to achieve in much more eloquent words than I'd ever be able to do.
In 1888, the National Geographic Society set out to explore the world and all that's in it. Now, we're leading a new age of exploration, building on our legendary legacy to advance a boundless future.
We're pushing the envelope in the most extreme environments on the planet.
Oh, yeah! Our global community of National Geographic explorers are driving cutting-edge science.
We're not just contributing to science, we're contributing to history.
Wow. Transformative education.
When students see people that look like them, it gives them that motivation that they need.
And unforgettable storytelling.
That's my responsibility, to do these stories justice.
Never gets old.
This is my obsession, seeing the planet as it used to be and try to bring it back.
And our mission to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world has never been more urgent. Together, we're meeting the challenges of today.
It's so big.
To achieve our bold vision for the future.
Yannick, you're on mute.
Thanks, Naomi. That was very helpful. But so what I was saying to myself was that the term explorers is basically a very cool term for us that we are using to describe our grantees. So all of the remarkable explorers that are joining me this evening have all started their relationship with us by applying for a grant. And by now, the National Geographic Society has awarded more than 14,000 grants to scientists, explorers, educated, and storytellers who are doing really important work around the world. So, I've talked about the legacy of 133 years, but it's really important to keep in mind that really we've been giving grants pretty much since the early years of the National Geographic Society when we were funded back in 1888. So we invest in this diverse community of National Geographic explorers that are, as I said, scientists, conservationists, storytellers, educators, and many other change makers, because we believe that it's that group of people who are defining the future of exploration and are helping to solve the world's most pressing problems. So this community of explorers is really a unique and remarkable and very powerful group of innovators and change makers that are working tirelessly to drive impact all around the world. In terms of our grant making, nearly half of our grants are going to women nowadays, and we're in a process of having more, we're a US-based organization, but we have, we're in the process of having more and more grant opportunities for people who are not in the US and opening up. So by now, this is an ongoing process, but currently around slightly more than 60% of our grants are awarded to non-US citizens and to people who are conducting important work all around the world. I think the commitment towards diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that is really, really important to us. And we actually believe that we can only achieve our mission to illuminate and protect the wonders of our world when people of every race, identity, experience, and ability have a role in our work. It's why we strive to foster a culture where everyone feels welcome, safe, included, and respected. And I think I'd like to go even further in really saying that it's the explorers that are bringing the yellow border to life. So, obviously, we're a global organization that works around the world, and we're not all the same, but it's actually these differences with our different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences that make National Geographic Society, but also our world a better place. So we embrace each person's identity, experiences, and abilities, and we commit to cultivating an environment where everyone benefits from opportunity, mutual respect, and a sense of belonging. We all have a story to tell. And we believe that when we share and celebrate our stories, that's really when the yellow border comes to life. So before I talk briefly about the grant opportunities that we're offering currently, I'd just like to say a little bit about where we hope that our organization is going in the next couple of years. So we've recently released NGNext, which is our bold strategic plan that defines what we're trying to achieve in the next 5 years. We believe that it really strengthens our foundation and builds on the momentum that we're already having. And as I said, embeds the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion into all aspects of our work. But most importantly, we believe that NGNext really provides a clear vision that allows us to drive or to continue to drive significant impact over the next few years. So if you are interested, I do recommend that you go to our website and find out a little bit more about NGNext, as this is something that's really exciting for us and that will sort of shape the next few years of our organization. So now I want to spend a few moments just to talk about the current grant program and the opportunities that we're offering. So at the moment, if you go on our website, both the level 1 and level 2 grants are available. And these grants are basically available for work in our 5 focus areas. So these focus areas are the ocean, critical landscapes, wildlife, human history, and cutting edge solutions, or also known as human ingenuity. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about what we mean for let's say projects in the ocean space. So for oceans, where our explorers are working alongside indigenous peoples and local communities to safeguard the world's oceans, biodiversity, and ecosystems for generations to come. In the land space, our explorers are developing and executing conservation strategies in partnership with local people and helping indigenous peoples and local communities with the goal of protecting 30% of the planet by 2030. So we're part of this global coalition that works towards 30 by 2030, and hope that through the protection of a significant amount of land, we can make a significant contribution towards biodiversity challenges. And then in the wildlife space, our explorers are leading inspirational awareness campaigns and cutting edge on-the-ground conservation projects that help to protect wildlife, preserve habitats, and promote peaceful coexistence between species and communities. And the human history and cultures, our explorers deepen our understanding of what it means to be human, enrich our knowledge of our shared history, and help us to preserve and protect cultural treasures around the world. And lastly, in human ingenuity space, our explorers develop and deploy groundbreaking technologies that help us monitor our changing planet, map the health of natural habitats, and address our planet's most pressing challenges. So within these 5 focus areas, the type of work that we're funding includes science work, conservation work, storytelling work, education work, and technology. So the grant opportunities that are currently available, the level 1 grants used to be called the early career grants, and they're really for people that are that are looking to establish themselves better in their field, hope to gain more experience leading a project, and those who are interested in joining our National Geographic community. So the level 1 grants are for individuals who are who are already National Geographic explorers, are not actually eligible to apply for level 1 grants. So this is really for new people to join our community and become part of our community. But people that have received National Geographic Young Explorer grants or recipients of the COVID-19 grants also can qualify for level 1 grants. And one thing to note is that applicants must be 18 years or older at the time of the application. The funding level for level 1 grants goes up to $20,000 and projects can be up to 1 year in length. And I think what's also important to note is that we look at the Explorer experience as more than just funding, and it's really the relationship that we're building. And the benefits of level 1 grants really go beyond the check in the mail or the funding for the project, but we provide unique opportunities for training, networking, coaching, mentorship, and actually much more from fellow National Geographic explorers, experts, staff, partners, and forums to really support our explorers to be the best version of themselves and to really put them in a position to drive impactful work. Then our level 2 grants, which are available right now, were formerly known as exploration grants, and these are for individuals who are more established in their fields and who are seeking a higher level of funding. And it's open for previous recipients of a National Geographic Society grant. I'd like to stress that these grants are highly competitive, and we're really looking for select projects that push the boundaries to achieve significant and tangible impact in the field that you're working in. And again, the applicants for these grants need to be 18 years or older at the time of the submission of the application. For the level 2 grants, the funding request can go up to $100,000 but we also obviously also accommodate smaller requests. These projects can be up to 2 years in length, and because here we're looking for more experienced people, that we're actually, hoping that the grantees for level 2 grants will provide mentorship within the Explorer community, will contribute their expertise to others, and participate in relevant speaking engagements upon request. And I think here the notion is really all, it's all about creating this global community of change makers. And I think since level 2 applicants are the ones that we're considering more senior, that they're the ones that are probably guiding some of the applicants or explorers that are, have come into our community from the level 1 funding opportunities. So, I'm sharing all of this because these grants are live right now. We have an application deadline for November 18th, so there's about 2 weeks to submit an application. So I do hope that some of you on this call are interested in joining our community and coming up with an exciting project idea. So let me just sort of, talk through a few key points that I'll outline how to apply for these grants. So the application must be submitted in English, but we're not judging anyone's English. A lot of us are not native speakers, and so it's really just about being able to convey what you want to do, but it's not about writing in sort of perfectly polished Oxford English. And the applications need to be submitted through our online portal on nationalgeographic.org's website, and you can also find a lot more information about our grants on our website. The project start date should be 6 months after the November 18th deadline. You need to include at least one local collaborator on your team, and review our code of ethics before you apply. And finally, you may can only submit one proposal as a project leader at the time. So, as I said, I wanted to give you this brief overview over the National Geographic Society grants. I hope that this gives you some inspiration and ideas to apply for our grant opportunities, or to at least review. These grant opportunities are available in sort of regular frequencies. So if you think that maybe the 18th of November deadline is too soon, then there will be another opportunity to apply for our grants in the near future. So with that, I'd like to now move into the presentations from our explorers from Asia. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the first explorer, Naomi Clark Shen, and she is a National Geographic explorer from Singapore, who splits her time between her PhD on sharks and rays and freelance science communication work. So Naomi, the floor is yours, and she will talk about how I guess science communication relates to her work and some of the lessons that she's learned. So thanks, and over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Yannick. I'll just share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thanks, Yannick. So as Yannick mentioned, I'm a National Geographic explorer from Singapore. I'm a shark and ray scientist and a science communicator. And this picture of me here is actually from a National Geographic storytelling bootcamp that we had a few years ago, which was really valuable. So today I'll be sharing about two very different aspects of my work. So the first is writing for a kids magazine. And the second thing I'll touch on is my shark and ray research that I've been doing for the last few years, which is funded by the National Geographic Society. So I worked for WWF Singapore on their children's magazine, which was called Panda Junior. And I was the researcher and writer for all of the issues. And we produced over 30 magazines in just over 3 years. And the thing that I loved about this magazine was that we had very specific themes, which enabled us to take kids on a unique learning journey and dive deep into specific topics. So for example, as you can see, we had species focuses like big cats and sharks. We had country focuses like the Amazon and Africa. And we had very unique themes like Alien Worlds, which was just all about bizarre animals and places. We had an issue on space, on dinosaurs. And we also had a spooky edition, which looked at animals which kids might find scary. And we tried to, make them love them a little bit more. So our very first issue was on climate change in 2017. And it wasn't a bad magazine, but we realized just how grim and miserable it was. It was very negative, and it probably left children feeling a bit depressed and helpless. So we rethought our strategy. How can we engage children more constructively? And we came up with a host of really cool and creative pages to do this. So here are some examples. So one of these pages was the travel page, where we took kids on journeys to learn about particular areas or landscapes. So on this page, they went to Komodo Island, which is the land of the dragons, to see the Komodo dragons. And here they visited an elephant orphanage in Africa. And we actually got firsthand accounts from the people that run the orphanage about what their day-to-day life is like. And on these pages, we even had a packing list just to make it more immersive and engaging for the children. Another page was the fiction page. And this page allowed us to anthropomorphize, because they were written from the perspective of the animal itself. And this allowed children to connect with animals better and evoke empathy. And it's just more engaging because fiction can be written in a very beautiful way as well. So in this comic story here, there was a shark tangled in a net and a sawfish came and released him. So this was a very nice way to broach the subject of bycatch and fishing gear to children. This story was set in the Mekong River. And it was about the endangered Irrawaddy dolphins that live there, and how there are a lot of dams being constructed along the Mekong River, and how this will impact the dolphins and the other animals that live there. And then this story was about songbirds that are poached in Indonesia for the illegal pet trade, and why it's not a very nice experience for the birds, so why we should avoid doing this. So all of these fiction stories were written in a very beautiful way, but did touch on very serious conservation issues. So we didn't want to shield kids totally from the negative reality of things, which I think some kids' magazines do. So we did have pages dedicated to just talking about some of the really harsh realities of our world today. So one of these pages was the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl. And some people thought we went a little bit far by talking about this, but we thought it was quite a unique and interesting piece. We had a special edition come out when all of the forest fires were happening a few years ago around the world. So there were fires in the Amazon, in Indonesia, and in Australia simultaneously. So we had a special issue dedicated to this. And we also had an issue specifically on pets, where I talked about cruel pet breeds that we should avoid. I think that a lot of children are very exposed to conservation topics, but not so much animal welfare. So even though WWF is a conservation organization, I would always try and weave in welfare messages when I could. And these negative pages were interspersed with very fun pages to keep it light. So we had the monthly poop scoop, which was a page that occurred in every issue and just talked about animal poo, because children love to talk about poo. And we also had silly pages like this one that just talked about animals that have silly mustaches. And it's just a fun way to get kids to learn about the natural world. And one of my favorite pages was Wildlife Wars, where animals went head to head in fights that would actually happen in real life. And it was a way for kids to learn about predator-prey interactions. And it was also interactive. So kids could add up the scores in each round to see which animal won the overall fight and how much they won it by. So eventually we came up with a balance of about 20% of pages touching on negative things and 80% being fun and positive. And we think that this is a really good balance when communicating with children. And of course, it's always important to link back to humans. So not only did we cover a lot of material on Indigenous people, such as this page on Aboriginal Australians, we also touched on people in cool jobs to show the kids that it is possible to have big dreams. So we got an interview with South Korea's first astronaut, as well as a ranger from Kenya. And we also encourage creativity among children, partly because the local curriculum in Singapore doesn't encourage much creativity, such as through the arts. So we thought it was a gap and a fun way to get kids engaged with conservation. So for example, this child wrote a really nice poem about animals and sent them in to us. We also got a lot of drawings and artwork by children, and also just letters. So this was a really nice letter, and we gave a shout out to her. She sent us a letter about how she loves our magazines and she has a dream to become a marine biologist, and our magazine is helping her achieve her dreams, kind of thing. So it was really nice to hear from children that the magazine was influencing them. And lastly, I find that a lot of communication material with children, they keep things very basic and simple, but I wanted to introduce more unique, novel aspects of our natural world. So we sometimes delved into tough concepts. So Foreign Invaders is about animals that shouldn't be in areas where they are, invasive species. And we also touched on colonialism here as well. And I find that a lot of communication on patterns in nature is about camouflage. But here we delved into some patterns that keep appearing in nature and whether it's a coincidence. So spirals, symmetry, and curves and bends. A lot of people might not know that these are the dominant patterns in nature. And we explore why that is. And I think even a lot of adults have never heard of this before. So whilst writing this very fun, creative kids magazine, I was also doing research at Singapore's fishery ports. And this was the work that was partly funded by National Geographic. And the communication strategy for this was very, very different. So the agency that manages the fishery ports gave us permission to do surveys for sharks and rays, and we agreed to work quietly and confidentially with them. And this is because of all the negative media, negative communications and campaigns and hype that tends to surround the killing of sharks. So they wanted to try and improve the situation in Singapore, but they wanted to avoid the negative hysteria that often comes with it. But just to mention that this is a very unique situation to Singapore, and many other countries are very comfortable with this sort of work being publicized. So for 3 years, we silently did this work, and not many people knew that we were doing it. So we were going to the port at midnight. It was really smelly, but it was just really, really cool to get data on everything that was coming in. And we silently published our findings after 3 years of surveys, and again, managed to keep it out of mainstream media. But we did publicize our finding at the port of this rare shark ray that hadn't been seen in over 20 years. And we publicized this because it was a very positive outcome and it was a huge win for conservation. So this species was actually about to be declared by the IUCN, but we found it and it resulted in it being listed as critically endangered, but not extinct. And subsequently to us finding this animal, and there has been a search of this island nearby to Singapore where it came from. And it turns out that there is actually quite a big remnant population of them. So this is a really cool example of research that has actually led to quite a big finding. So I just wanted to share all this to show that communication strategies can vary greatly between different types of work, and you need to be able to adapt to what is needed at the time to get the job done. And lastly, this research led to me doing a PhD, and I've been able to be more communicative about this work, which I have really enjoyed. I'm dissecting sharks and rays to learn about their lives, such as what do they eat, how long do they live for, how many babies do they have. And I found that what engages people most on my social media is sharing about the babies that I find within the mothers. So here are some pictures of the babies that I've pulled out of the mothers. It seems to evoke the most empathy from people and connect them more with what I'm doing. And this is interesting for me because I find that people connect with fish less than most other animals. So I'm interested in strategies to create more of a connection between humans and fish. So thank you for listening. This is just a little insight to the various work I do and how communication strategies differ. And a lot of the communication and storytelling tips I've learned have come from the National Geographic Society, such as the storytelling bootcamp that I attended. So it's a very valuable community to be part of. And being able to call yourself a National Geographic Explorer is the coolest thing. So if you have an idea for a project, I would really encourage you to apply. Thanks so much. Over to you, Yannick.
Thank you, Naomi. And that ending obviously was music to my ears. So that's I'm very, very glad to hear this. But thank you so much for sharing your experiences and I think emphasizing the importance of being targeted with different groups when we're talking about the science communication efforts. And I think you're having a very sort of wide field of work where you're communicating various aspects of science. So now I'd like to hand over to Joshua Ivandi, who is a National Geographic explorer and documentary photographer based in Indonesia. And his work was recently selected as a finalist in the Pulitzer Prize in the breaking news photography. So, while Josh is getting ready to have his presentation up and running, I'd like to also just remind everyone in the audience of the Q&A function. So, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box to ask your questions to any of the explorers, or to myself. We'll address them at the end of the session, but just so that you don't forget what you wanted to ask, please feel free to type your questions into the box already now. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Josh.
All right, thank you so much, Yannick. I'm just going to share my screen real quick here. Can you see my screen okay, Yannick?
Yeah, looks great. Thanks, Josh.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Joshua Rwandi. It's an honor to be here as part of this year's Science Agora. This is my story that kind of has become on its own a case study for science communication. Last year, National Geographic magazine published my image to the feature How Pandemics Changes. It was the photograph of a suspected COVID-19 victim in a hospital in Indonesia on a patient's deathbed awaiting a body bag. As mandated by the Indonesian Ministry of Health, the wrapping of the body is a standard procedure for every suspected comorbid and positive confirmed COVID-19 deaths. As is the case with most victims, family members were not allowed to say goodbye. This image was part of my reportage on the doctors and nurses at a COVID-19 hospital ward in Indonesia. I wanted to show the work of the medical force fighting the pandemic. Early on, I organized food donations for the medical workers. I gained the trust of the doctors and nurses and witnessed the nature of their work. The reality for most doctors and nurses, families of patients and victims, and myself as a photojournalist that was allowed access to the hospital was vastly different to what the public might be seeing on a daily basis. As chaos unrolled, the government played down the seriousness of the spread of the virus. We simply decided to wake up late to the pandemic, the greatest medical crisis in modern Indonesian history. Ahead of my coverage, I was well aware of the ethical dilemma in doing work of this nature. However, I was met with heavy challenge when this photograph was about to be published by National Geographic. The hospital was reluctant to release the image, fearing its outcome from the government and the public. I consulted veteran photojournalists as well as academics for opinion, and they supported my case. Media lawyers ensured the publication was legal. Eventually, the picture was allowed to be published with total anonymity. The story came out. but it was when I republished the image on my personal Instagram that the photo sparked violent reactions. I wanted to highlight the human cost of coronavirus. I wanted people to know what the consequences might be if we ignore the health protocols. I wanted people to know what the reality was after months of statistics and adaptation to new normal. Everyone needed to know. But in an unforeseen turn of events, I became #1 trending topic in Indonesia. Celebrities and government officials doubted the legitimacy of the image. I was accused of setting up the photo to spread fear. Many thought I brought studio lights to photograph the body. Many thought it was a mannequin inside. I was called a slave of WHO, slave of Disney, agent of the Jews. They say media is the virus, or if the photographer is still alive after 2 weeks, this is all pure business. Details of my private life were also released as news. I received violent direct messages, racial abuse, and comments across all social media channels. An Indonesian singer with over 2 million followers questioned the image. He said that because my post was being shared by accounts with big followers, he suspected this image, this propaganda, he says, must have been planned. He questioned why were families not allowed to see their loved ones while a photographer was able to. He also said on an Instagram post that, quote unquote, COVID exists, but it's not that scary. The Indonesian COVID-19 task force spokesperson claimed that myself and the people who shared the image as being unethical, even though one of the members of his own task force team with 1.7 million followers sent me a direct message on Instagram asking for my permission to repost the image on her Instagram story. Eventually, the Indonesian government tried to hunt down and identify the hospital where the photograph was made. Consequently, to protect the hospital and sources, the rest of my images and stories from the COVID ward may never be published. To weather the storm, I requested National Geographic to re-verify the image through an Instagram post. Within 21 hours, the post received over 1 million likes. National Geographic offered security personnel to protect my house for 24 hours, 7 days a week. The Committee for the Protection of Journalists in Bangkok also offered to make a statement. I had to refuse, so as not to add fuel to the fire. The Indonesian Photojournalists Association stepped up. The association demanded publicly for the singer to apologize and take the post down. A senior former Reuters photojournalist led 3 public webinars in a row defending the work, saying that the work of a photojournalist cannot be equated with the work of an influencer. As a result of this viral activity throughout Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, my initial post received over 355,000 likes, has been shared 142,000 times on Instagram story, and saved 30,000 times as this post insight shows. My followers on Instagram went from 1,300 to 37.8 thousand in the space of 2 weeks. In the midst of this all, up until today, there has been 2,032 medical workers in Indonesia who have died from the pandemic, the highest mortality rate of medical workers due to COVID-19 in Southeast Asia, in a country with 1 doctor in every 10,000 population. Now, where are the influencers and the policymakers who ridicule visual journalists when the country's medical system breaks down? Can we hold them accountable for tainting information that were served to inform and warn about the dangers of the virus. All of us are paying the price now. We are at a point in time in history where facts are never before so difficult to be accepted. Social media is now the most substantive and effective means to bring our message. They have become indispensable. Yet, we constantly lose control of ownership. Our words and images too often are stolen, distorted, defamed, decontextualized. It came almost as no surprise that my image was used both as an example for those who believe and don't believe in COVID-19. We come upon a worrying fact that the only version of reality people choose to believe in is the reality they choose for themselves. It's an echo chamber with no exit door. We hope to be scientists, storytellers, researchers, continuously making work with facts as its foundations. Yet, how do we continue to communicate our facts, our findings? Within social media, how does our work stand the stream of information and disinformation set out by social media algorithm? Most of all, how do we restore people's faith in science? These are the questions and worries that will beleaguer our work as fact finders in the coming future. These are the questions that demand our deep reflection. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. This was obviously, really interesting, really deep, and I think, very current. And I think it's highlighting sort of a very central aspect of I guess, why the importance of science, why science communication is so important these days. And yeah, thanks for sharing your experiences, and which were at some point really painful and challenging for you and your family. So I'm really sorry that you had to experience this and go through this. But thanks for highlighting and sharing all of this. So
thank you.
I'd now like to move on to our last but not least explorer, who's going to share some of her work today. So I'd like to call on Annalyn Cabras, and she's a coleopterist from the Philippines, and she is based at the University of Mindanao, and she will share a little bit about the amazing work that she is doing. So, Anne, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Yannick. I'll share my screen briefly. I hope you can see my screen. A pleasant day, everyone.
Yes, looks good.
Wonderful. A pleasant day, everyone. I'm Anne Cabras. As what Yannick has mentioned, I'm a coleopterist, which means that I study beetles for a living. I am from the beautiful island Philippines. So as you can see, this looks like a paradise on earth. This is an archipelago of more than 7,000 islands, and also has an area of 300,000 square kilometers, which is just a little bit smaller than Japan. The Philippines is one of the 18 mega-diverse countries in the world. So this 18 mega-diverse countries in the world, they constitute 70 to 80% of the world's entire flora and fauna. And the Philippines has 52,000 species. We rank second in terms of butterfly and vascular plant endemism. So you can see in here this lovely common numap-wing butterfly, as well as this corpse flower. We also rank fifth in terms of mammal and bird endemism. We have in here our lovely tamarao from Mindoro and our Philippine eagle, and all of these species can only be found in my country. However, the Philippines is also one of the hottest of hotspots. It is a global priority conservation site because of the habitat degradation that is happening in it. So some of the factors includes illegal logging, mining. We have this unsustainable agricultural practices such as this slash and burn farming, wherein the locals would burn the entire forest and plant them with vegetables and other agricultural produce. And at the moment, we have a lot of threatened species here in the Philippines. So this is the trend of Philippine forest cover in the past 100 years. So by the year 1900s, we had 70% forest cover. It dwindled down to 60% by 1920s, 30% by 1970s, and only 22.2% by 1999. And sadly, by the year 2000, there was a 2.1% attrition in the forest cover that we have here in the Philippines up to now. So you can imagine how much forest we just have left at the moment. And of course, some of the badly affected organisms are the endemic species, such as this very lovely Easter egg beetle, which is endemic only in the mountains of Mindanao. And when we think of beetles, we usually just ignore them and don't think that they are relevant enough, but they play huge and crucial role in our ecosystem. So some of the functions that they do includes forest regeneration, nutrient cycling. They're also responsible for pollination of our flowers. As a matter of fact, 88% of the 240,000 species of flowers are being pollinated by beetles because of the diversity that they have. And also, they're great macro decomposers. So these dung beetles, as a trivia, saved an entire continent. This happened in Australia when the Europeans came to Australia and they brought some cattle and sheep in Australia, but there were no dung beetles that could actually decompose the manure of these cattle and sheep. And so they just lie on the ground, and eventually it caused a fly infestation and really brought headache to the Australian people. And so thanks to the entomologists, they suggested that they import dung beetles to Australia. And this is how, this tiny small organisms were able to save an entire continent. But despite the huge role that they play in our ecosystem, here in the Philippines, they remain to be highly neglected and undervalued. As a matter of fact, they are not studied here in the Philippines. And because of that, a lot of these species may go extinct without being known to science. And so that is one of the job that I do with discovering new species and, hope that the data that we gather can help in their conservation. So in the past years, we have discovered roughly 40 to 50 new species to science. And these are some of the lovely species that we have discovered. And we are so glad that it got featured in National Geographic Society because it really amplified the work that we are doing here in the Philippines. Like, who would just notice, beetles being found in the Philippines? But thanks to National Geographic, it brought limelight to the work that we are doing. Because one of the problem also here in the Philippines is that our education system highly focuses on foreign species. So the schools here teach the kids about lions and giraffes and zebras, but not really about the Philippine eagle, about the tamarao, about the corpse flower that we have here in the Philippines. And so a lot of these students grew up without appreciation of the endemic species that we have here. And so one of the activities that we have been conducting with the support of National Geographic Society is BioBleeds. So this is a very cool activity. It is an intense period of finding and identifying as many species as possible within a designated area in a given period of time. So this is, of course, an activity which involves citizen science. Citizen science refer to the involvement of local people such as these students to collect scientific data to increase scientific knowledge. So as you can see, the kids here are very excited to capture some frogs, to look for some birds, and to look for some very interesting plants. and of course, to look for some beetles. So we did this activity in very remote area here in the Philippines, and the students there were never able to use a stereo microscope. So after collecting some beetles, we brought some stereo microscope, and it was the first time that they were able to see the intricate parts and patterns of the insects that we have collected, and they were extremely excited and happy about it. This is another BioBlitz activity that we have conducted in Mount Apo. This Mount Apo is the highest mountain in the Philippines, and it's a protected area. So these kids, as you can see, are very excited, to be riding in an army vehicle, to get a free ride into a great adventure of looking for different plants and animals in Mount Apo. So we did this activity together with the Bagobo Tagabawa tribe. These are indigenous communities which are living within the periphery of Mount Apo. We have in here Dato Lawrence, and these are the Bagobo Tagabawa kids. They're often underrepresented, and we are very happy that we did this activity with them, and hopefully that this activity would inspire them to get involved in conservation, that they play a great role in the conservation, and that one day I hope that they will be inspired to become biologists, taxonomists, conservationists, and probably even National Geographic explorer. And we have also been conducting guided nature walks. So this is an activity that we do every month or couple of months, wherein we guide high school students, elementary students, as well as adults into the green parks that we have here in Davao City. And we help document the local flora and fauna in the city. And it has been a really fun activity, and we have been getting some good feedback that some of the high school students would want to become a biologist because they really enjoy doing this kind of activity. And recently, we have been training our local forest guards and the staff working for the Department of Environment, so that they will be the one doing the citizen science activities in the protected areas. So I hope that this will, continue to inspire them to help in the documentation of our local biodiversity. Because we are in a race against time in documenting and protecting our species before extinction catches up, and we need more boots on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for sharing, the aspects of your work and your passion around beetles, and I think your efforts on citizen science and really the work about inspiring the next generation. So thanks a lot for sharing this and for outlining this. So this now brings us to the panel discussion and the Q&A. So again, I'd like to encourage all audience members to use the Q&A function. So if you have any questions to any of the presenters, please feel free to use the Q&A box and enter your questions. Everyone is more than happy to answer your questions. While we are waiting for questions from the audience, I'd like to just kick it off and go back to Naomi, and I'd like to sort of talk a little bit about your personal feelings, because I guess when you talked about the shark study, you've mentioned that obviously you needed to respect some restrictions that allowed you to do the work, and had these restrictions to communicate the findings of your shark and ray research. I'd be interested to what you felt about it, and what that meant for the way that you could communicate your science, but also how you could drive impact with the findings.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, one of the, I guess the problem is that sharks are one of the most emotive topics in conservation, because of all this past media and campaigns that I talked about, specifically from the Western world. And, you know, I think that shaming of Asia is where the problem lies. And this has made it tough to work on the issue because people are actually scared of working with conservationists now because of all this negativity. So in this instance, the restriction on communication actually made it easier to build rapport with people in the industry and get the information that we needed, and get the research done that we needed. Because once we told them that we were keeping things quiet and we were going to work constructively with them, they opened up a lot more and were more eager to share. And this has actually paid off for us because we're now doing continuation work to use our results to actually work with traders and fishermen to create policies that will actually help the situation. And if we hadn't have done that, and if we had mainly done it for publicity purposes, I don't think we would have had that relationship to now do the work that we're doing. So we are also looking to become a bit more public and start talking about the positive change we made. So there is a time and place for communicating research, and ours was a little delayed, but it is happening now.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think, you know, the maybe your case is a little bit extreme in terms of the restrictions, but I think to some degree, you know, everybody who works in science needs to make these choices, and I think timing is an absolute important factor for this. And I'm not sure if my kind of jump to the next question makes sense, but I think, you know, you've also talked a little bit about the work with children and communicating science with to children through the magazine. So I guess, you know, the two questions I have, I mean, one is there a timing, you know, a timing factor when working with children? I mean, you know, we just had Halloween, and you mentioned sort of scary animals. Was sort of timing in that sense something you built into your strategy? And also just generally, like, what was the most challenging topic to communicate through the magazine that you had to work with, and what were your sort of answers or strategies to overcome this?
Okay, yeah. So timing was key. That's a good point. We always try to keep things relevant. So around Christmas time was usually when we did like the polar issues. So it was like this nice snowy magazine with white fluffy animals in it. And then, for example, like when the Living Planet report came out, we did a special issue on the top 20 animals that are in trouble and things like that. Halloween, we always did some sort of spooky issue, which looked at spiders, bugs, and snakes and stuff like that. In terms of what was the most challenging topic to communicate, it was definitely climate change. So many of the concepts around climate change are not only quite difficult to break down, such as ocean acidification, but they're also very difficult to explain in an engaging way, I find. So we always overcame this by linking climate change to how the animals are actually affected. So for example, instead of just explaining the science behind ice melt, we talked about how ice melt means mother polar bears will find it harder to find food for their cubs. So creating this story around animals, particularly if baby animals can be involved, definitely always helped.
Yep, that's a really good way, I guess, to break it down and to make it relatable to that specific young audience. So thanks for this. I've also noticed that we have a question in the Q&A. So there was a question which I believe is to myself. If there's any age limit or restriction for applying to grants. So the only age limit that the National Geographic Society has at the moment is that if you want to apply for the level 1 or level 2 grant, you need to be at least 18 years of age at the time of submission. But in terms of the maximum age, I guess there is no limitation to that. It's kind of as long as you're physically capable to conduct the work, you're more than welcome to apply for that. So I hope that answered the question, and thank you for kicking off the Q&A. So if there's any other questions, please feel free. As I said, we're all happy to answer these questions. But I'd go back to Joshua, and I think you've outlined the process, and you've outlined the challenges, and you've also outlined the pain that comes with with the photo. But can you talk a little bit about sort of the advantages and disadvantages of having a photo gone viral? Because I think for a photographer, I think you've gotten a lot of bad aspects of having gone viral, but on the other hand, you've also gotten a lot of attention. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about this.
All right, thank you, Yannick. I mean, between the advantage and the disadvantage, social media is always going to be a two-edged sword, so to speak. In terms of the advantage, of course, especially when I first posted the image on Instagram, it was a wake-up call to a lot of people, and a lot of people commented, in the comment box, on that post. They were quite grateful that okay, this is the image that need to wake people up. Even like one of my close friends from elementary school, whose father died because of COVID, said, this is the image that to wake people up. And of course, it was being shared by, not always in a negative light. It was also being shared in a positive light by celebrities and government, by government officials too. But then, of course, the disadvantage being, we no longer have any control towards our work, so to speak. People would screenshot it, and then they repost it, and then they change the caption, and completely, decontextualize our work. The original caption that I put at the beginning, was completely changed. I mean, it was not, an image without a caption is just like a loose image that anybody could analyze and interpret in their own ways. And that I think that's one of the disadvantage that I could think of.
Yeah, thanks. I guess when you say analyze, you can also misanalyze the photo and obviously make their wrong sort of interpretations. And I guess if we stay on the topic of the of the viral activity, and you going through this on a I guess mainly domestic scale, but partially also global scale. So what was the most striking aspect? What surprised you from having to go through this experience?
What's striking to me the most is certainly like how polarized opinions were when it comes to COVID. Because if we remember, which feels like a life ago now, at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought we're gonna be together, we're gonna support each other, and then like the hashtag stay at home, everything that's all that we post and share on social media. But then as the economy obviously broke down, and families and friends, they're all having their own hardships and such. Then eventually, people end up having their own thoughts and minds about COVID. Now, one of the things about social media, of course, with social media algorithm, is like the more you tend to believe or you like or comment on a certain topic that you believe in, and then it will feed you back the same content. So if you continue believing in COVID deniers or anti-vaxxers, then that will feed you back the same items.
Yeah.
So this polarization is like one. What's most striking to me, like how do you unite all of these voices and have a kind of coherent and clear battle strategy against COVID, when a lot of the people are, they don't believe in COVID, they don't believe in the vaccines, etc.
Yeah, and I think linked to this, I mean, obviously this is a difficult time for yourself, for your family. How did you cope through going through this extremely challenging and stressful phase? And besides the kind of support that you've already mentioned, the presentation, what kind of support did you get, and from whom?
Yeah, well, I'm going to repeat the support that I got. I mean, as soon as it went viral, and this is where I'm super grateful to be to stay within the National Geographic family. When it became viral, it became a little intimidating and scary when it became news that the government wants to find out where the hospital was, to try to identify it. So I immediately rang my program officer at the society, and to take everything down from my profile in Nat Geo. And then after that, of course, because it first appeared as a digital story on National Geographic website, then it became my Instagram post. But then people were also questioning, like, why wasn't National Geographic posted this as well? So National Geographic, posted that on their social media. So that's like number one support that I got. And there were 3 additional stories, they published out of this. And of course, one of the writers also connected to me with the Committee for the Protection of Journalists, the representative in Bangkok. So one thing to learn is that within our scientific community, so to speak, when we hit a rough patch, there will be always a community, a team that will always back us up, if we are doing the right thing. And then I think that's really important, and then that's why I'm extremely grateful to be in this society.
No, I think that's actually really, really good and really encouraging point, that besides the sort of the wave of negativity, that there was also there are institutions that have supported you, that have helped. There are peers that have helped and were able to support you and to set things straight. And I think that's encouraging, because I think when people go through this, and when people face doubt about their work, that it's good to know that there are these institutions that can back you up and jump to your side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if it wasn't for National Geographic, if I was just working for a local media, it would have been a completely different story.
Yeah.
Especially in this region where freedom of speech is a little harder to grasp, from other parts of the world. Who knows where I might wind up.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So thanks for sharing, Josh. I'd like to move to Anne to ask a few questions, and to allow Anne to share a little bit more. And I guess from the from you do strike me as the typical explorer. You go out there, you discover new species. And how did your love for exploration actually start, Anne?
Yes, actually, my love for exploration started when I was very young, because I grew up in the province. So I had a very typical provincial life, wherein I was climbing trees, I was catching bugs and butterflies. So up to now, I'm still doing that. I was swimming in rivers. So yeah, it was a very fun childhood. And yes, I think that is how everything started. It's not really my course, but later on, I chose that this is the life that I wanted. And yes, I really do enjoy going out and discovering something new, especially here in the Philippines, that the scientific studies has been very delayed, and so there are so many discoveries that aren't being studied, and we need more people to be doing that. And I'm very happy and fortunate to be part of those group of people.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's good to see that you were able to sort of turn your childhood passion into something that you're doing professionally now, and that you're obviously very passionate about. So also, it would be great if you could talk a little bit about how the work that you're doing on beetles and science communications is actually impacting your country, the Philippines, at the moment.
Yes, I'm very grateful actually for National Geographic for giving me this platform, because studies about beetles in the Philippines, there was no studies for the past 100 years. So it has become dormant until, me and my colleagues starting doing beetle research here in the Philippines. And yes, this is very impactful to the country, because as you can see, the habitat loss is really real. And as I have mentioned in my presentation, a lot of these beetles are actually going to go extinct without being known to science. And if no one will discover them, if no one will put a name to them, if no one will actually study their ecology, their biology, their geographic distribution, then they will just be forever be gone. And so yeah, I think the work that I do is very important, because I give names to this species, and I invite other people through science communication to study the beetles, not only the beetles, but our very diverse flora and fauna here in the Philippines. And by doing so, I think it gives limelight to these species that are often neglected and undervalued. So yeah, I think that's how I'm able to contribute a bit.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's so important to monitor these species, to to as you say, to give them a name and to make sure that there's a record for generations to come, because only when these records exist, it is actually easier to make a case when it comes to policy decisions or any other decisions, to protect these species. So and the last question I'd like to ask you is, I mean, you're very engaged, you're a professor on the one hand, you're doing your discoveries, you're doing science communication. I know that you're also very involved in citizen science, and you're still young and at the sort of beginning or early stages of your career. So what mark do you want to leave in this planet, once we've all retired and sit down and have a drink? So what what would you like to look back to?
Yeah, so when I actually started studying beetles, like all the literatures that I could find were German, because the coleopterists and entomologists who studied here in the Philippines were German. And so I couldn't understand it. I had a really difficult time. And so I think one of the simple impact that I want to leave is that I just want to lay down the foundation for that work here in the Philippines. The literatures that I'm reading is actually like 1925 and 1800s. And there are mostly not Filipinos doing that. I've never read a literature written 100 years ago by a Filipino. So I hope that, after 20, 30, 100 years from now, Filipinos would be reading a literature about beetles written by a Filipino. So I think,
that's a really fantastic goal, and I think that would make all the difference. So good luck with your next steps on doing this. And I'd like to now open sort of my next questions to all of you, to the whole panel, and just a reminder to the audience, we're close to the end of this session. So if you have any questions, your sort of final chances are coming. But I'd like to address the panel and sort of, you've all shared the aspects of science communication that you focus on, but from your point of view, sort of when we talk about science communication, why is it important? And when we do science communications, what is important? So yeah, Naomi, Joshua, and this question goes out to all three of you.
I think we're all very shy, Yannick, so you might have to pick on us, but I can jump in. I think it's important that obviously science communication is accurate, up to date, non-biased, and basically trustworthy, because, science basically informs how we live and the choices that we make every single day. It literally guides the right decisions through life, such as how to minimize our impact on the earth or how to behave properly in a pandemic to keep us healthy. So yeah, this is why I think it's very important.
Thanks, Naomi, and thanks for going first. Joshua, Anne, anything to add? Any thoughts?
Well, I second everything Naomi just said. I think I faced it myself. Even for an image that is, as a matter of fact, and that's the reality. It was so it was hard for people to accept that, so to speak. How do you? Obviously, it's probably I'm probably giving more questions than answers, but how do you convince people that that this is the reality? But then, of course, we have to factor in the psychology throughout the pandemic, how people could be in denial, of course, especially if when people got COVID for the first time, then they are in complete denial. From the stories I heard, they are in denial of, okay, do I actually have this thing, and then how do I move forward from here? So it is very important science communication to be weaved into our conversation daily, especially for governments, because they're what they're communicating at the end of the day. So they want to communicate science, but then how do they do that when people are rejecting it, so to speak? It's I was just thinking this morning, it's like talking to the flat earthers, how do you convince that the earth is round?
Well, it's that's a good point, and I think as you said, it's so I guess important for institutions to communicate the right and the robust science, so that these things can't be challenged because they are correct, because they are the truth, and because they are objectively the truth. And anything to add from your end?
Yes, I think it is very important that we communicate science in a way that would be understood by the audience. So it should be something that should be relevant culturally. So we need to be inclusive also in our science communication. So if we just keep on talking about all these scientific names and all this great discoveries and stuff like that, but without linking it to their culture, what's relevant to the people, I think that won't really make sense to them. So I think we have to communicate it in such a way that would be culturally relevant to them and would make them feel included in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and I think if I might just add, I think one aspect of inclusion is for science, citizen science is a perfect example that allows citizens not to only be part of sort of the output of the work, but actually be part from the beginning, and that gives a certain level of transparency and a certain level of ownership and involvement that actually helps in these processes. So I'd like to then move to the final question of today's session, and I think that obviously all of us agree that science communication is so important, but I guess at the same time, all of you are very busy. You have your your own lives, you have your busy jobs, and you're trying to change the world, and you want to cover lots of different stories. So how do you balance these requirements? And to a certain extent, I would say that sometimes especially if you work in the science world, often doing science communication, talking to the general public is seen like an add-on to the actual day job, or is seen as because for a lot of scientists, often the communication happens at conferences, the communication happens through papers, and then really communicating to the general public is something that sometimes is not part of the day job. So but I know that all you three of you think it's important. So how do you integrate that into your work, and how do you find the right balance?
Okay, I'll go again, just stick to the same order.
let's stick with that order. This order worked well for tonight.
It's a good question. I think that the way that I generally approach all of my work is I let it organically happen, if that makes sense. So I tend to do work when I'm feeling up to that work, because I feel like it's more effective to do it then than forcing myself to do it at a time that I'm not feeling it. And that's the same for the communication part. So I only share something when I get an organic urge to do so. So it really comes to me like, this is really cool and I want to share it. And then I'll share it because it comes naturally to me. I think that I find on my social media that some people overshare about their research and it disengages me. So I actually stop being interested in what they're doing because there's just too much content coming through. So that's why I think it's very important to kind of let it come naturally and you feel when it's the right time to share something.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, because I think as much as we're talking about sort of sharing and then focusing on science communication, I do think yes, you can do too much and you can lose your audience, and you can, I guess, also even not only lose your audience in terms of quantity, but you can also lose your audience with information, right? Because I think you don't want your people on Instagram, for example, to read a full research paper, right? You want to give them the key messages to take away. So that's a very good point. So Joshua, anything, since we stick to that order for tonight, that's set in stone. Joshua, anything from your end to that question?
Well, as a documentary photographer, photojournalist, photographer, I think that the science communication happens when my work gets published. I think that's key, and when it becomes in the form of magazine or newspaper, that's when it happens. But then of course, I mean, like I do the work beforehand, and it was all good. When it become published, then a lot of the time, sometimes I republish it on my own Instagram, for example, like I did with that image. But then I think, especially today, especially as people are seeing us, for example, as National Geographic explorers and or photojournalists, and they rely on us to tell the truth, to tell what as facts. There was an incident I think last year where there was this photojournalist who posted some on his Instagram that people in Ethiopia or one of these countries they are immune to COVID, but then obviously that statement is not based on any facts or
it would be beautiful if that were the case.
Yeah, but then obviously that caused dismay among members of the community, because people are looking up to us to tell the truth. So I think in terms of carrying science communication, I think it's important that sometimes I feel as National Geographic explorers, we're also ambassadors of the brand and the values that it stands for. And I think it's important to remember that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point about the responsibility, I guess, that comes with this. And And the final floor for this session is yours. Anything to add in terms of the balance? And I know that you spent a lot of time on, on the citizen science efforts, for example. So how do you balance to, doing the science, talking to your science stakeholders, but also, talking to the next generation and doing all of this?
Yes, I agree with Naomi about, being strategic. So because I'm doing lots of things, so I have to be really strategic on the activities that I'm doing, as well as what I am communicating, because I don't want to also exhaust my audience, so I just share very strategic points or activities that we are doing that would communicate and encourage other people to be doing the same thing. So I think being strategic is really key, and putting the limelight on the right things.
Yeah, making the right choices is so important. So well, so with that, I'd like to thank all three of you, Naomi, Joshua, and thank you so much for sharing your work, for giving insights, for contributing to the conversation. It was a lot of fun to listen to you and to talk about this important topic to you. I'd also like to thank the audience for joining us today. And finally, last but not least, I'd like to thank the Science Agora 2021 organizers for giving us the opportunity to talk about this. And I'd like to close with just reminding everyone about our grant opportunities. Do check out our website if you're interested, nationalgeographic.org/funding opportunities to learn more about it, and do not hesitate to reach out to our team if there are any questions about these grant opportunities. With that, I'd wish everyone a good evening. Thanks for joining. Stay healthy, stay well, take care, and see you all soon. So thank you very much. This ends today's session. Take care, everyone.